Canada's silent, fallen soldier, a casualty of the Great War whose identity remains a deliberate mystery. A soldier who lays at the foot of the National War Memorial under the timeless gaze of his comrades. A soldier whose duty to the country never ends.
The unknown soldier himself is that touch point for every, because it could have been any of us.
The great wars of the last century, slaughter on an unimaginable scale, tens of thousands of Canadians with no known grave. As countries once again ponder the unthinkable, we're forced to ask ourselves, with today's DNA technology, if there is a future war, will there ever be an unknown soldier?
I think that the existing tombs of unknown soldiers in various nations will remain, and I think they will continue to have powerful symbolic value. But it seems to me quite doubtful that we'll have any unknowns in future wars.
Every Remembrance Day, Canadians rebury the tomb under the gentle weight of poppies. Yet very few today have a personal connection to the kind of sorrow that gave rise to these monuments. Does the concept of an unknown soldier still have meaning to an on-demand, just-in-time generation? Or will it simply become a relic of a bygone era? One of the last tombs to be established was in Newfoundland in 2024. An unidentified soldier brought home after more than a century of resting in French soil, a representative of more than 800 Newfoundlanders who fought and died in the First World War. Canada as a nation was also a relative latecomer in creating its own national tomb. These touchstones were mostly a phenomenon of the 1920s. That's when the UK established one of the first, the Tomb of the Unknown Warrior. A time when the memories, the loss, and the wounds of the Great War were still raw. The United States was not far behind, creating a tomb where today unknown soldiers of several wars are interred. It wasn't until May 2000 when Canada embraced the legacy and laid to rest its unknown soldier at the foot of the National War Memorial with great ceremony.
The unknown soldier was exhumed from Cabaret Rouge near Vimy Ridge, and he was brought back to Ottawa. They went out of their way to make sure that it was a relatively randomized selection of individuals who would be the final candidates before actively deciding who would be the one to be exhumed and returned home. And the reason for that is they truly wanted to ensure that he was going to be an unknown soldier in perpetuity.
And there was good reason for that. A few years before, technology started to strip away the anonymity of the unknown war dead. In the late 1990s, DNA revealed the identity of the Vietnam-era soldier in the United States, forcing a painful decision.
It would have been incomprehensible to the people who really launched that project after World War I. And so, this was a case in which remains were identified. Remains were actually removed from the tomb, which again would have been a shock, I think, to earlier generations of American veterans, and then actually identified. And what it signals is the end of this kind of practice.
Should we know who lies beneath these stones? In the case of Canada's unknown soldier, we choose not to know as a matter of reverence and regulation. The Commonwealth War Graves Commission only gives up its war dead in unknown graves as long as the country accepting them swears no effort will be made at identification.
Each of these stones represents a person, and from the headstones you can actually tell their entire story. And I think that speaks volumes to remembering who they are.
Over 29,000 Canadians remain unaccounted for in the wars of the previous century, and it is the act of reclaiming a lost life, a missing identity, that is at the heart of DND's Casualty Identification Team, which is part CSI, part historical detective.
The program exists so that whenever there's newly discovered human remains, typically they're discovered because of construction or farming activity, we then sort of start an investigation to see if we can identify that individual so that he can be buried with his name, by his unit, and in the presence of family.
DNA plays a role in 99% of Dr. Sarah Lockyer's investigations. She understands and respects what the unknown soldier stands for. But in essence, it is her mission to make sure no one remains unknown. And that's where science collides with sacred symbolism.
It is the complete opposite of what my job is. It is the complete opposite of one of the major points of forensic anthropology, of being able to identify unknown individuals and return their names and their faces to them. It goes completely against that, yes. And admittedly, I still struggle with having had to do the exact opposites of what my field sort of requires and what my job typically requires.
The Afghan war and peacekeeping missions were different for Canadians. Casualties came home to their families, unlike the world wars, which leads to the question, would Canadians accept a modern unknown soldier? Would loved ones today accept not knowing?
I would be opposed to anybody trying to find out who the unknown soldier is, that's buried at our National War Memorial, because it's such a powerful symbol. But on the other hand, I'm a dad, and if it was my child, I would want to know.
While DNA can put a name to the fallen, it can't measure our loss as a nation or the extent of a family's personal grief. It is often said, no one is ever truly dead as long as you remember them and speak their name. It's more complicated, but nonetheless true for the unknown soldier.